Hey guys, and welcome to the live stream. I am Steven. I will be playing stuff for you, answering your questions, and just in general doing U-bass related stuff. So today I'm in a different location. Got to get the camera set and everything, but I thought it'd be fun to just kind of play through the amp and just have a live stream like I've done before in the past. So if you want to hear something, just let me know. If you have any questions about U-bass, either this one or any of the other models, just let me know. And I'll be happy to answer any questions for you and potentially play some songs if you have some requests. Maybe I can help you with the bass line or something and teach something in the process. So as always, I started the night with Green Tea, which is a song that I wrote a long time ago, really, at this point. It's definitely over 10 years old. I hope it's not 20 yet. Who knows? But in that one, I'm using a lot of different techniques. So I'm plucking 2 notes at once, right from near the beginning of the song. And then I have like a slap. I'm not slapping super hard, but it's on beats 2 and 4, so that's like creating a backbeat. And then when I'm doing these chords, I'm able to play a melody with the G string notes, and I'm able to play a harmony note, or the bass note rather, on the E string. So just kind of breaking that down, and then the rest of the bass line is like the open G strings. Like it's kind of what I'm doing. If you take the melody away, I'm doing the root of whatever chord I'm on, which in this case is a G chord, and then I'm playing the 5th, which is a D note, and I'm playing it twice with that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 rhythm, and then I'm just adding that backbeat on beats 2 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then I'm able to add the melody with the other fingers on the left hand. So it's a fun thing to do. It's kind of like a solo bass technique. Obviously, you wouldn't really want to do this too much in a song, because someone else will be playing the melody and someone else will be playing the percussion if you have a drummer. If you don't have a drummer, adding a backbeat might be helpful, unless you have an acoustic guitar player adding a backbeat. Okay. So let's talk about some other techniques, right? So on the right hand there, I was plucking 2 notes at the same time with my thumb and my middle finger. But let's talk about some other things you can do. So we did that. We did a slap. And this is not slap bass. This is like an open-handed slap, more like what you do on an upright bass. Right? Like that kind of thing to add a little bit of percussion. But you could also do a slap bass like you would on bass guitar. That's using your thumb. And then basically what you're doing there is you're kind of turning your hand into the string and bouncing your thumb off, kind of like a drumstick. So you don't want to leave your hand there too long or it kills the note. So you want to bounce off the string. And then you want to practice hitting the other strings and getting that bounce too. That's the hardest part of slap, is just getting that like wrist motion and getting your thumb to bounce and not sit on the string even slightly too long. One secret is pretend like you're trying to stop your thumb this far away from the string, and then that way the momentum will carry it through that point, but it'll return to that point. So that's one secret to kind of get that bounce. And then in addition to slapping, you can pop, and popping is where you create like a hook. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking. A hook with your hand. So basically it's a little bit more rigid of a hook. So it's kind of like when you pull, it pulls the string away, and then when you release the string, it's slapping the frets, creating that pop sound. So you got the slap, pop. We can kind of combine that with ghosted slaps. So that's where you, instead of having notes that you're pushing down over here, you could just mute the strings to get that percussive sound. And then we can kind of like do some real notes and some ghost notes like that where you're muting. So full notes, ghost notes, and then you can do the same with the pops. So pop note, a pop ghost note. So you can kind of hear the combination of those notes. So slap notes, ghosted notes. Slap, pop, ghost, ghost, slap, ghost, pop. Okay, so that's a lot of the right hand technique stuff, just generalized things. Another thing you can do with the right hand is you can use your thumb kind of like a pick. Victor Wooten does this a lot. So down and up with the thumb, it's called double thump. If you do it with enough force to kind of hear the note. It's kind of hard to get that much force out of it, so I'm just lightly using my thumb like a pick. And then one thing that Victor likes to do is like you go down with the thumb, then you hammer on, and you come up with the thumb. Okay, so we've covered a lot of different right hand techniques on this one. So we've done plucking 2 notes at the same time, slapping, the backbeat kind of slapping, and then the electric bass kind we're doing slap and pop, and then the double thump. Okay, and then another thing you can do is you can kind of mute lightly back by the bridge and play with your thumb. That's a good way to get the metal strings to sound a little bit more like the polyurethane strings. And you can use your thumb, or you can pluck with your pointer finger and middle finger over here, all while muting with your palm back here. So when I say muting with my palm, I'm really taking the edge of my palm right here. I'm sticking it right next to the bridge. And so that's how I'm getting that effect. But that's a lot of right hand technique stuff. So now let's talk about the left hand. things you can do. So generally when we play a note, we're just pushing down, holding down, and that's how we play a single note. You can push down 2 at once. If you're plucking 2 at once, you might want to push down 2 things. Right here I'm pushing the 3rd fret on the E string and the 4th fret on the G string at the same time, playing both of those. You can also do hammer-ons, which is where you play a note and you're like, you might be holding down a note or it might be the open string, it doesn't matter which. But then instead of plucking the next note with your right hand, you just forcefully put down the finger on the other hand. So that's a hammer-on. And then you can do the opposite, it's called a pull-off, where you play the higher fretted note, leave the other finger down, ready to go. So that's already pushing down even though we were playing this note. And then you just pull that finger off to get the other note to ring out. So a hammer on and a pull off. Notice I only plucked the first note and then the hammer on was all left hand. And then same with the pull off. Pluck that note, but when I go to pull off, my right hand's not doing anything. So what Victor Wooten likes to do is he combines that right hand technique where you go down and up with the thumb with the hammer on in the middle. So he might go down on the open E string, stop on the A string, and then he's ready to come up with the thumb. But rather than coming up right away, he'll hammer on a note in between. And then he'll come up. So down strum through the string with the thumb. Then you're going to hammer onto the 3rd fret on the E string, and then come up with the thumb. And then try to get it evenly spaced. Down, hammer, up. Down, hammer, up. And then practice doing it in different spots. And that's kind of what he does at the beginning of classical thump, or near the beginning of classical thump, not the first couple passes around. So when he does all that stuff, he's doing down, hammer, up, down, hammer, up, down, hammer, up, down, hammer, up, down, hammer, up. On all of those little parts. This part too. And oops. But you get the idea. So that's something that you can do to combine right hand techniques with left hand techniques. Another way to combine right hand and left hand techniques, it's kind of like hammer-ons, but you're not playing a note first. You're just pushing down a note just out of nowhere. So this is called tapping. You can do the left hand tapping. Your right hand's not doing anything at all. Your left hand's just playing different notes. Or you can do right-handed tapping, where basically you take a couple of fingers or maybe just one finger on the right hand. Do that. So you can combine them together and play more like a piano if you want to. Those. Yeah, and it's kind of weird if you have your hands crossing there. I was trying to make something up while tapping. But basically you can use the left hand to tap the bass line and the right hand to make up a melody. Cool. So that's kind of how you combine them. So let's talk about other techniques. This one kind of uses both hands, but you basically, with the left hand, you touch lightly over particular frets. And when I say over the frets, I mean literally over the piece of metal for this. To do some harmonics, you just touch very lightly, and then you still pluck with your right hand like you normally would. So when I say you touch very lightly, you're not pushing a string down like holding it down into the fret. You're just barely touching the string. It is not touching anything else. The string is still hovering. It's just touching your finger at these specific spots. Right over the piece of metal. And it only works over certain frets. The 12th fret works really well. The 7th fret works pretty well. The 9th fret's okay. 5th fret's similar. And then the 4th fret, you play a little bit behind the piece of metal. There's even one there too. So those are harmonics. So that's another technique that you can do. I guess I'm just going over a bunch of different techniques. Some are advanced, some are intermediate, just that kind of stuff. Oh, I moved on from tapping too fast though. So there's left hand tapping and right hand tapping before I go back to harmonics. But you can also kind of combine them to where they're more like hammer-ons and pull-offs. So like you play the first note, you hammer onto that note, then your other hand taps another note. So, you know, it's kind of that Van Halen style of tapping. Not that he was the first to do it or anything, but he's pretty well known for it. So tapping with the right hand, pulling off to a left hand note, and then hammering on with the other note. So that's the other kind of tapping that you can do. And you could also just tap percussive things, I guess, with individual fingers. Just mute over here and, you know, just kind of tap on the strings. I don't do that a whole bunch, but you can. Let me think of some other techniques that I haven't gone over. I guess slides. We haven't gone over slides yet. This is a left-hand technique. So basically, there are two ways to do it. You can play a note and then slide afterwards. You can slide it up or down, but you can either hit the note and then slide, or you can do them simultaneously, where you hit and start the slide at the same time. You notice I threw in one like hammer on, or maybe it was a pull off in the middle of that. So you can combine all these techniques. So I guess I'm just going to try to play something and tell you what technique I'm using when I'm doing it. Okay. Okay. So now I'm playing two notes at the same time. These are also called double stops. I'm doing that back beat over here. This slap is kind of a combination of the thumb slap and just kind of like literally slapping the strings open-handed. So my thumb is hitting the E string, but the other hands are just kind of, the other fingers are just kind of resting on the strings. So there's techniques there. Then we can like hammer on and slide within this. Hammer-on pull-off combinations. Now I'm doing the thumb slap, but I'm not doing the pops with it. So the pops are a little bit more in your face than the normal plucks. So these are like normal plucks, and these are pops. There's a pop. Did a really small slide with my pinky there. And then I did a pull off from the pinky to the pointer finger just then. Right there, I was doing a lot of slap that also included hammer-ons and pull-offs. So I was slapping an octave, then I was hitting a note, hammering on, and doing some ghost notes in between. So it was like slap, pop, ghost slap, ghost pop, hit a note, hammer on, and then pop another note. And that thing was a slide, 3rd fret to 4th fret. And then I'm just plucking a note. I think I was popping the note after that. Sometimes I'll combine slides with a pull off on the next string. So that was a slide from 3 to 4 and a pull off from the 5th fret to the 4th fret of the D string afterwards. So on the G string is the slide, and then hitting a note and pulling off to another one. Oh, that's how I did a hammer on there. Slide, pull off. So you can do all those different kind of combinations and stuff whenever you want to. Okay, so another thing you can do is kind of a finger picking style. Where you're using your thumb, your pointer finger, and your middle finger on your plucking hand to play individual strings, kind of like you would on a guitar or ukulele. And then another thing you could do is you could go down with the thumb and up with the thumb, and then add the other 2 fingers in. So down, up, pluck, pluck. Another thing you can do is strums. So occasionally in that little last passage, I was strumming down on a ghosted note where my fingernails are hitting the strings on the strumming hand, but my left hand is muting everything. Or you could play actual notes with the strum. So there's a really good Primus song that uses slapped notes on the E string, and then the rest of his hand is just kind of going down and up. So he's strumming down with his fingernails and coming up with his fingertips. So that's what's going on the right hand. Slap. So slap, strum, 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 slap, strum, 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 over and over again. So he's slapping downward. The first strum's upward, then he comes back down with the next one. So that's what this hand's doing. Thumb up, down, up, down, up, down, up, thumb up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then your other hand is adding a lot of hammer-ons. So the first slap is on the 3rd fret of the E string, and then he's coming up on the open G and the open D string, just open. But as soon as you come up with those, the next time you go down, actually before you get the down strum, you come up, then you hammer onto the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on the D string. Then you do that strum on the opens. This time it's a down strum. You hammer onto the 3rd and 5th fret again. And you come up on the opens and you hammer onto the 3rd fret and the 5th fret, still on the D string again. And then this last time, on the down strum, he still strums the open strings. This time he just hammers on to the 3rd fret on the G string instead of the D string. So far we've got, and then he hammers onto the 5th fret on the D string after that. So, and the last few are just a down strum, up strum, and down strum while he's holding down that 5th fret. And I'm kind of using the bottom of my finger to mute the string underneath it. That's a good combination of a lot of the techniques we just talked about. You've got a slap. Instead of doing pop with the slap, he's strumming. Down, up, and the other hand is doing hammer-ons. Yeah, so strum, hammer-on, strum, hammer-on. Pretty cool riff. So that's how you can kind of combine all of these things, and how a lot of bass players that maybe do more advanced techniques in their songs, how they incorporate this into their songs. So that being said, let's go back to harmonics. So once again, harmonics are specific places on the bass, or the E bass, where you touch the string lightly. Notice I'm not pushing down. Like when you fret a note, you push down. So you're pushing the string into the frets in the fretboard. But what I'm saying is let the string continue floating. Just very, very lightly touch it right over the 7th piece of metal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the actual piece of metal, and touch it very, very lightly, trying to just make a point over that little piece of metal. And then you pluck with your right hand. And usually it helps if you pluck closer to the bridge versus closer to the neck. Hear how it rings out a little bit louder. So it works over the 7th fret, or the 5th fret, the 12th fret, sometimes just a little bit behind the 4th fret and a little bit ahead of the 3rd fret. Okay. When I say ahead, I mean closer to you, and when I say behind, I mean further from you. Okay. So those are harmonics. You can also do false harmonics, where basically it's the same idea of, you know, if you were doing the 12th fret harmonic, well, now we can do a note down here. Like, let's say we do the 5th fret, maybe the 3rd fret. Let's do the 3rd fret. And you go, okay, well, now I'm going to go 12 frets away from here. So 12 plus 3, since this is the 3rd fret, is the 15th fret. So I should be able to put this finger lightly on there and then pluck with one of my other fingers and get an artificial harmonic right there, whereas it doesn't work right next to it, right? But it does right there. And once you hit it, you can let go of it. You don't have to leave your finger there. Okay. But you do have to leave this one down. Okay. So that's how you do artificial harmonics. So you can kind of make. Was a really bad example. But a good example of the artificial harmonics, Jocko will use kind of the side of his thumb. And then he. Okay, and that brings me to another technique I haven't talked about yet, and that's bends. So you play a note, and rather than sliding up to another note, you want to match that pitch by bending the string upward. So I usually use multiple fingers. So like I'll have one finger in front that kind of stays down in between the fret, and then these other ones are supporting it, pushing up. So I'm trying to match that pitch from this one. So I'm going to go dun, dun. So you got to practice bends so you get used to bending them in tune and not going too far or not far enough. So if y'all are enjoying the video, let me know in the chat. Say hey. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you're enjoying this, and if you have any questions about the U-bass, or just about what I'm talking about or what I'm playing. I know some of these techniques are a little bit advanced, like the false harmonics especially. And combining that with bends, that means you can bend the false harmonics. Oh, if you can find the right place. I think it's that I don't have enough treble on the bass this year. There it is. Yeah, so you can do that as well. Those are called false harmonics or artificial harmonics. We talked about ghosted notes. You can ghost notes when you're just plucking. You don't have to slap ghosted notes or pop them. You just pluck ghosted notes too. So what I'm doing for that is just my left hand is stopping the strings from ringing out, just touching the strings lightly but not pushing down. And then my right hand's just plucking the string that's muted. So note, muted note, note, muted note. And so you hear that a lot in like funky bass lines. But yeah, it's a note that doesn't really have a lot of pitch definition. But it does have a nice percussive quality to it. Excuse me. So yeah, that's a lot of techniques. I don't even know if I could mention what we've gone over at this point. There's so many. Let's see. Plucking 2 notes at the same time. I'm going to try to do it. Okay. Shoot. Try to go over the right hand ones first. Using the thumb like a pick. Okay. Muting back here next to the bridge. So palm muting kind of. Okay. What's another one that we went over that was just a right hand technique? Down, up, pluck, pluck, a combination of going down, up, and then plucking the next 2 strings. Okay, we did right-handed tapping as part of the 2-handed tapping thing like a piano. Cool. So that's something else. So then Clayton says, I have no clue what you're saying. I barely know that you are in fact playing a bass. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, I like that too, where people are spreading knowledge and teaching each other, not tearing people down. I like that as well. Well said. So hopefully you can hear everything I'm saying. I'm not sure if you're saying that you were having trouble hearing it or just understand the meaning behind it. But yeah, so a lot of these are just different techniques that you can do. And yes, there are a lot of different ones, right? I didn't really have a clear idea of what I was going to do starting this video, so I just kind of jumped in with that and then went with that. Okay, thank you. So it's not the sound, it's just the knowledge. So I'm trying to clarify, like the most basic way of playing bass, you're just kind of like plucking the strings upward while holding a note down over here or playing an open string, which means not touching the string of the left hand. But everything else that we've been doing has been like an extra technique that we're adding to that. Or you can pluck 2 notes at the same time. Finger pickings where you use your thumb, pointer, and middle finger all simultaneously, but you're basically just plucking there. Then you can use your thumb kind of like a pick where you go down and up with the thumbnail or the side of the thumb. Okay. So I'm trying to think of what other ones I went over that I haven't talked about yet. Tapping is where, like normally you hold down a note and pluck, like we just said, but tapping is where you just push the note down forcefully enough and then hold it down afterwards to where you can sound a note without using 2 hands, but just 1. And then that way it frees your other hand up to do that as well. And you can sort of play the bass like a piano if you do that. So that's the bass line the left hand is doing. And my right hand's going to tap a melody. So that's kind of the idea with tapping. And that's one style of tapping. The other style uses more like hammer-ons and pull-offs, which means, okay, let's say you play a note and then you push down forcefully with the same hand, with the finger on the same hand on a different fret. Those are hammer-ons. And the opposite are pull-offs, where you play a note and then you pull the finger off, almost like you're plucking while the other finger is pushing down. And then you can add to that with the right-handed tapping, playing a note, then pulling off to the low note, then hammering on with the other note. So that's kind of like that Van Halen style of playing. So that's another technique. We talked about harmonics. That's where you touch the string lightly in certain places. It doesn't work everywhere, like it doesn't really work here. But if you touch right over certain pieces of metal, and you want to do it right over the metal, you'll get these nice little bell sounding things going on. And remember, you're not pushing down into the fretboard. It's not making contact with that piece of metal, the vertical pieces of metal. It's just floating still. It's just your fingers touching very lightly right where that piece of metal is. And you get that cool kind of sound. Okay. Then I think we talked about a couple other things like slap bass. So on the right hand, that's where your thumb is kind of like percussively hitting the string and bouncing off of it. And And then a pop is where you kind of create a hook with these fingers and pull like straight out so that the string snaps back and hits the frets, creating a popping kind of sound. So slap, pop, slap, pop. Then if you, instead of holding the notes down, if you just put your hand lightly over the strings, you can kind of get that percussive sort of drum kind of sound instead. Right? So ghosted slap and pop sounds kind of like a drum. And then when you play it with notes, it sounds like a drum playing with a band. You have the attack of the note, but you also have a note ringing out too. And you can mix them together. And then I'm adding hammer-ons in there to fill out the sound. All right, well, thanks, Clayton. I appreciate you dropping by and saying hi, even if you don't play music. Hopefully you learned something while you're hanging out here. Very cool. But yeah, there's a whole slew of techniques you can do, and a lot of those were the right hand techniques. I guess I didn't even get into strumming. You can strum with your fingernails too if you want to. And that's where I started talking about that Primus song. I kind of went through how that works. If you go back, you can kind of hear a little almost tutorial on it. There's strumming with this hand, occasionally slapping. And then this hand is doing a lot of hammer-ons. So strum, hammer-on, hammer-on. Yep. So that's the basic idea of a lot of the techniques I use in solo stuff and sometimes in band gigs too. Slap bass comes up sometimes. Hammer-ons come up all the time. Hammer-ons and pull-offs. And sometimes I'll do the muted technique where I'm palm muting back here, especially on like a quiet section of a song, or if I'm trying to make an electric bass sound more like an upright bass. That kind of kills the sustain. Because you don't always want the notes to ring out in certain styles of music. Yeah. All right, so does anybody have any questions about any of this or just about the U-bass? If you're someone that's not a musician and you just stumbled upon this randomly, the U-bass is basically a ukulele-sized bass. Usually they have like polyurethane strings on them instead of metal strings, but this one has metal strings with a nylon core, so specially made ones just for it. And yeah. They're short, but they still sound a lot like a bass because of the kind of pickup they use, and they plug into an amp. If you don't have them plugged into an amp, they're really not that loud. So I know it's kind of weird to talk about that, but I just realized there was someone on here that's not really a musician, so they might benefit from just knowing what this instrument is that I'm playing. And for everybody else, there's all those techniques. I use the ghosted notes with the plucking. So I'm plucking over here, but occasionally I'm just laying this hand across the strings instead of playing the notes. In a lot of funk lines and things like that, I do that. So when you hear that, can you tell which techniques I'm using? Can you hear where I'm doing hammer-ons and hear where I'm doing the muted ghost notes versus the regular notes? And then we talked about a bend too. And the idea with a bend is you're just pushing that string up while holding it against the fret so that the sound doesn't die out. And you're trying to match this fret to maybe the pitch, let's say 2 frets above it sometimes. That's a whole step bend. So I'm trying to make it go bum, 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 bum. It's a smooth connected sound. Even more smooth than hammering on or even sliding. Because when you slide, you have bum, bum, bum. You have just the frets in between. But when you bend, you have all the pitches in between just smoothly going to a note. So you can combine all those. And then we can go into like some strumming stuff, like so there's a whole bunch of different things you can do with that. So that's this whole video, I guess, is kind of just an overview of different techniques you can do on the bass. And that's not nearly all of them. I'm leaving out a bunch of stuff. But if you learn a lot of the ones covered in this video, you'll find that you come across definitely the bends, definitely the slides, definitely the hammer-ons in a lot of pop music or alternative rock music. The ghost notes come out in funk music a lot because you want to imitate drums a little bit more there. Yeah, so let's see, Lady Hannah's. Yeah, you're a little bit late, but we basically just went over a whole bunch of different techniques. So I talked about right hand techniques and left hand techniques. So really quickly, plucking two notes at the same time like this, finger picking where you're using, thumb and the other fingers like you would on a guitar or ukulele, that kind of finger picking. Strumming, slapping, ghosted notes. I was trying to literally just give an overview of basically most of the main techniques that you might come across. Bends with this hand, slides, hammer-ons, and pull-offs. And then I did some combined right hand and left hand techniques where I'm like playing a note, hammering on there, and then right hand tapping. Kind of briefly talked about that one. And then the other kind of tapping where you're basically just pushing down forcefully to create the note. They're not really connected together. So I can play a bass line over here and a melody over here at the same time. Anyway, not a good example of it, but that's what I get for trying to improvise a tapping thing that's more like a piano part. Okay, a simple piano part, mind you. But there's that. And then I went over a couple of songs that kind of combine these really well. So one example was, it's called American Life. It's a Primus song. So he is slapping. So he's doing some slap bass by just slapping the 3rd fret on the E string. And then he's doing some strumming. So sometimes he's going down with his fingernails. Other times he's coming up with his fingers. So it's like down, up, down, up. And his particular kind, he's kind of opening his hand up and closing it back. That's kind of how he's strumming. So it sounds really complicated, but the right hand is only going slap, up strum, down strum, up strum. That's all that's doing. And then the left hand is adding those hammer-ons. So it's like strum, hammer on. So hammering on the 3rd fret, hammering on the 5th fret. And he just does that over and over. So strum, hammer on, strum, hammer on. So we slap the first note. So that's a really good example of a combination of slapping, strumming, hammering on. So if you're trying to, oh, thank you for saying it's a beautiful bass. Yeah, this one's the Kala Journeyman. I don't think they make the red ones anymore. Maybe they'll bring them back one day. I think they make them in black still, or if they don't, they still have them, plenty of them for sale. On Amazon, I only see the ones like this that are just completely black, other than the you know, everything else like the inlays and the borders and everything. All right, and then we talked about harmonics briefly. I'm not going to go over those as much again, but there's natural harmonics, and then the artificial ones where you hold down a note and then go something like a good example is 12 frets up from it, and then touch lightly right over the fret, and then use another finger to pluck. And then as soon as you do that, you can remove your hand and the note will still ring out. Rather than sounding low like that, it'll be an octave higher. Okay, so there's those. There's actually a thing called tapped harmonics. It's a type of artificial harmonic where you just kind of you put enough pressure right over a fret while holding another thing down over there. Right, and you tap right over the fret, and you can get an artificial harmonic out that way, and that's a tapped harmonic. So that's one that I didn't cover earlier, but it's like a combination of tapping, but it's also got that vibe of slapping where you like bounce off the string, but you're also holding a note down here and making an artificial harmonic. So it's a lot of things going on at once if you look at it that way, but it's not super hard if you understand the basic concepts of it and where you have to hit, the precision of it. Yeah. All right, so do you have any U-bass related questions or technique related questions? Just let me know in the comments. I guess I'm going to play the other song I usually end up playing. So at the beginning, I played Green Tea as always. This song is called Going Camping. It's not really that much different than Green Tea. It's just slightly different techniques, but same kind of chords and stuff. So that one uses a couple of those techniques too. I'm kind of slapping to get the backbeat some of the time, if there's a note that needs to be played underneath it. Other times I'm doing the ghosted slap kind of thing where I just kind of lay my hand down and it mutes all the strings, but it also creates a percussive sound. And then I was playing two notes at the same time, and then I think I was just plucking the other notes. Yeah, and so those are the basic techniques in there. And in the middle, I was just mostly plucking. I tried to add the backbeats. But it didn't work out super well, so I just kind of like went with it. I always kind of improvise that middle section of the song. All right, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and head out. But I appreciate you all being here. Thanks for being so supportive of the channel. And I hope you enjoyed the music tonight and the lesson. And if you missed a lot of it, just feel free to go back to it. I keep these videos up usually under the playlist that says U-Bass Live. So there's a playlist of them basically. Or you can just go to the tab on my channel that says Live, and it should be hanging out under there after the fact as well. All right. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Cheers.